So we did a series of two really important trials, all with the assistance and guidance of the Society of Urologic Oncology Clinical Trials Consortium. And time doesn't allow me to thank all of the wonderful members of that organization, really pioneered and led by my good friend and colleague, Colin Dinney at MD Anderson. But we ended up doing approximately a 50-patient single-arm study in BCG-unresponsive, high-risk NMIBC patients, and the data for the Nadofaragene Firadenovec, today known as commercially as Adstiladrin, was pretty remarkable because this was a composite molecule given once every 3 months intravesically. And what we were able to show as the MOA is a viral gene adenovirus vector that essentially has a marked stimulation in interferon in the bladder, and is very well tolerated, the sort of side effects you'd see with instrumentation. And this led to the second high-risk NMIBC BCG-unresponsive approval after the prior approval of pembrolizumab. We did our phase 2 study, we published it in JCO, and then we did a second 150-patient trial that also demonstrated the same high rate of efficacy in this tough-to-treat patient population with the same safety profile, and we published that in Lancet Oncology. So in the high-risk NMIBC group, the TAG3s, the CIS, the T1s, we said, well, we've got this really a very appealing Q3 month mode of delivery, intravesical, no systemic absorption, really good tolerability. What about the population known as the intermediate risk NMIBC population, and thus the moving forward to ABLE-32? So we have a BCG shortage, so many patients who have intermediate risk disease defined as, multiple lesions, TAG3 less than 3 centimeter, lesions greater than 5 centimeter, not high grade, recurrences in less than a year. There's so many patients that fall into that category. And then when you dovetail that to the fact that there's a BCG shortage, and we do have intravesical chemotherapies available, that's why we said, okay, this is a really interesting study, real proud to co-PI it with my good friend and colleague at University of Pennsylvania, Trinity Bevilacqua. So to look at the nadofaragene given every 3 months in its approved form as it is for BCG high-risk unresponsive, and we are looking to get about 450 patients, one-to-one randomization. They'll get nado versus observation of attempts at complete TURBT. Primary endpoint being recurrence-free survival. We'll follow these patients very closely for 2 years for the RFS, recurrent-free survival, and an additional 3-year follow-up. Stratification will be on any prior treatments and whether or not they get any perioperative chemotherapy, classically like gemcitabine, and we'll also stratify by regions in the world. Essentially, by combining the adenovirus vector with a gene incorporation, you allow for the innate ability within the urothelium to generate large assay within the bladder, within the urothelium, large development of interferon. And interferon's been very well known to have apoptotic and even some would argue a cytocidal or a cytotoxic effect on rapidly proliferating cells, particularly cancer cells. Little over 450 patients. We're starting enrollment in first quarter of 2025. And this is a one-to-one randomization for patients who fall under the intermediate risk classification. There's a lot of different ways we define intermediate risk. I think, for the most part, we'll be using combination IBCG, AUA, SUO guidelines for these patients. It's not very complicated. There are a lot of these patients who fit into that category who are not low risk and not high risk. And it's a one-to-one. They'll get Nado provided by the company and for Q3 month and still quarterly. And if they get a recurrence within less than 24 months, they can cross over to get Nado provided. The other group will just get observation and monitoring for recurrence. I think that's a good question. The key things are going to be making sure that there's regular Q3 month follow-up. We'll be getting cytology and, of course, other biomarkers for investigational purposes. But I think the fact that, if patients recur in the treatment, in the non-treatment arm, in the observation arm, that's part of the endpoint. I think that because the schedule of administration is so patient and clinic friendly, I don't see that as being a challenge. And I think patients, really like the idea of being preventative with medication that's provided by clinic. Some may be challenged who say, oh, I want to still give therapy to these patients despite the fact that they don't have any recurrence, and that would be technically a barrier. So we need sites that say, yes, we're going to do a complete resection, and we're don't have a challenge with providing any additional intravesical treatment, whether it's BCG or any of the available intravesical chemotherapies. Well, I think we're going to wait and see what this shows. We were hoping to get an answer pretty quickly. We have some registry studies going on, which I think are going to be really important to see patients who respond with a 1 year of treatment. How long will they continue to respond with additional years of treatment? We also have some additional trials moving forward and combining this with immuno-oncologic therapies, classically checkpoint inhibitors. So I think it's a pretty robust pipeline. There are some other things that we're looking at as well. I'm excited about it. There's a retreatment trial that we're looking at in the BCG-unresponsive group. We're looking at other combinations as well.